The person that was sitting next to me was a class old friend, Courtney, and she looked at me after the TV was turned on, and she looked at me and she said, "Aren't you also a Muslim?" Because in some of the broadcasts, immediately they went for it was Muslim or Islamic extremism, which is actually an oxymoron in it.
You know, I mean, there's no way that I could grow up living in this culture and not feel something that I need to take a look at and shake it out and make sure that's how I want to feel. The most I've come to feeling excluded is, I have a very different family right now. My wife and I have adopted 3 kids. They now call them their
The community, and what I see in front of me is more or less everybody, quite a few, interfaith interest to the community. I can see that everybody in the audience appears to me that you're already aware of what's going on.
Mandalore, both through our phone conversations and emails, meeting you in person and to be in your presence as well. To let you know about my faith, I always say there is a part of me which is Hindu, because I grew up as a Christian family, one Christian family in a predominantly Hindu community, which even today votes Marxist when elections come. So there is part of me which is Marxist, part of me which is Hindu, part of me Christian, and at the core, ours happens to be the only outcast family in the entire neighborhood. So when we went to school, people stared at us.
Faith that has caught your attention, if you can tell the audience, if it might be in a story form or a faith in your language, but and why? Why did it catch your attention?
But it's a good question. What is it in my specific faith as a Hindu that attracted me? Although in my early childhood, I went to a missionary school. So I had an exposure to the Bible before I came to learn of our own Gita. So I was already exposed, and with fellow beings like my brother here, my best friend was a Muslim. So I could go to his mosque, and he'd say, "Come on, we're going to have a nice chicken after that." And I said, "Wonderful." So for me, to be able to grow up in that type of environment was conducive to asking questions. Who am I? And although I grew up in a Hindu family, my mother was educated enough to tell me that your root, your heritage, you cannot deny. And do not try and take something that doesn't belong to you. Meaning, unless you understand what it is. So I had a chance to look at all of them as closely as I could. In high school, the question came up. This question was that college which would give me a free scholarship if I accepted Christian faith. Which means I could study further, but I had to take the Bible with one hand, and I rejected the Bible. This is an issue that we all have to face. Where do you make the decision which is right or truth that you ultimately believe in, for which you stand up? So that question was, for me, very simple. Is money worth anything? Is name worth anything? Name and fame. If you're willing to give that up, that's when you begin to say, this is what the truth is. So in Bhagavad Gita, as I learned a little bit further, through one of our wonderful teachers, and he was very helpful even in my college days when I had the questions and crisis, I identify with the white community. They have the privilege, the class, and yet we don't have that structure as Hindu to be able to stand up. And the truth ultimately prevails is the way I looked at it. So what helped me tremendously was with Gandhi's campaign, with my own brothers from the Islamic faith, including the Jewish brothers, who were very vocal and very easy to work with. They were willing to give you scholarship to study in Israel. No strings attached. Now that tells you who is here to convert, who is here to make sure that you go further, and willing to make sure that you get the knowledge that you need. And ultimately, from my perspective, as I grew older and towards the 60s, I asked the ultimate question. So I went to the ashram, I said, I have to learn Sanskrit. Without Sanskrit, I don't know my own books. So I learned Sanskrit. And having learned it, I come across one word that just completely blew me away. That one subject which no one teaches today, and it is not available because it's a lost, I could call it, knowledge. And that knowledge is still available for those who are spiritually inclined. Vedanta. Ved, anta, Sanskrit word, ved, knowledge, anta, end. This subject will tell you that having learned that subject, there's nothing else to learn.
But if you note the statistics, which my background is also in research, I believe in the graphs, and that's how policies are made. Unless you're able to prove a point, that's when you get a policy passed or a law passed. So so it's been shown that people who are not affiliated with any religion, or they call themselves not affiliated with any religion, or they call themselves spiritual, are growing high in number, right? They're growing high in number almost to the top 4 spots of the other major religions. What do you have to say for a person who says, I don't believe in religion, and why do you think this number is raising?
It's interesting. This is all these numbers are based on the census. So the last census we had was 2010, but between 2000 and 2010, the percentage of people who identify themselves as nuns, N-O-N-E-S, rose 914% in Fulton County. And now it's the second largest demographic group when you are looking to identify religious preference. You have Protestant, which is 50.1%, and then you have nuns, which is 34.2% in Fulton County. It is a huge...
That this is what this book so-and-so says so. But if there is no such thing as a book, Hinduism is not based on one book, it's not based on the book. We don't have one founder or many founders. Any faith that comes into Hinduism, we welcome it. At the same time,
So tell me, what has politics or political affiliations have to do with these exploitations that create divisions, and also please express your views as well.
Religion has been used. Religion has been used by those who had self-interest to divide the humanity. Religion never taught us to hate each other. It is those who use it for their personal reasons, personal gains. And those who follow them blindly are the victims. The issue is there are some people who, for their personal gains, would like to build walls, divide us, not only on the religious basis. We see in this world
Specific question that the audience has asked while registering, and then open up it to the audience so you have a direct connection and you can ask the questions. So what do we hear? What do we assume, right? How do we overcome prejudice? So now you have to tell me who is better, right? So I'm going to give you 2 parts, A and B, and you have to raise hands who is better, husband or a wife.
You have to go home.
Man or a woman, who's better and why? Man or a woman? Yeah,
You want to go back to the first? Or you just,
husband or a wife.
and there is no third or gray, you have to decide one of the 2.
Yes.
And that's what you're asking us to
Okay,
participate
yes,
in?
yes.
Okay. Husband or wife?
Who's
Yes,
better?
Show of hand or wife?
Husband?
Wife.
Wife, okay, good. That's because you don't have your wife here. Well, with what she was wearing, and what I was telling her to remove, she felt offended. Why do you ask me to remove something that I'm comfortable with? I'm happy with my family, with my kids, with my husband. And he helps me, we work together as a family, as any other family. So you don't have any right to come and tell me what should I wear and not wear. It's your personal choice, but you can't put that personal choice into mine. So that's just my personal story. But I'm sure as a scripture scholar, you have a different story.
So, yeah. I never saw that question coming, by the way. So that is a very common question about terrorism and things like that. So the question is false. And again, factually it's false. To say that...
Is your mic on?
Yeah, to say that majority of terrorism comes from the Muslim extremist group is completely wrong. And somebody needs to update some of our politicians about that stuff also, because being at the top, they don't know that. As you saw, Nelson Mandela, his adjacent to him was who? I forget his name. He just passed away recently.
Not Becky, you think you know?
No, the Muslim, Ibrahim. The person who was incarcerated with him was a Muslim. This was his lifelong partner who encouraged him, stood by his side, supported him. In India, the revolt against the British, it was all together effort. The indigenous people of India, the Sikh, the Buddhists, the Hindus, the Muslims came together. So going back, the FBI statistics show that 94% of the terroristic acts that are carried out are non-Muslim. You have a greater chance dying from being struck by lightning than dying from a Muslim. No, seriously, I'm not. This is not a joke. This is statistic. Georgia State University, GSU, did a social project where they had their social scientists go out, and their question was, why is it that some issues in the media get more coverage than the others? And this is a 19-page article. If you want to know the in-depth answer, you can read that article, right? But again, it goes back to specific, and our beloved president, he's very supportive of this too, that the media is really against, and that's what it is. At the end of the day, media, it's about, when I took the media training classes, the first thing that my media training instructor told me really turned me off immediately. She came in and she said, listen people, media, if you don't know anything about media, people don't care about facts. The general masses do not care about facts. They go on gut instinct and feeling. And he said, psychologically, 95% of our reaction, not response, reaction is based on our gut feeling. So statistically, when you look at recorded extremism, the first extremists recorded were the Jewish zealots. They're known as the Saccharides. And the first, so what happened with the young man who went into a church and sat amongst them, or the atheist Gary Chapman, I believe, in Chapel Hill, who killed. These are, by definition, yes, there are terrorist attacks, but they're not termed. So it goes back to factually 94%. This is FBI statistics. 94%. This was. I was in LA. My wife were in LA. And I went into a legislative briefing. And the FBI had sent somebody from HR to come and debrief clergy on statistics. And when we heard the statistics, some people in that room were very uncomfortable hearing that in America, there's more terrorist attacks from the Caucasian community more than any other. But again, it doesn't get coverage. So that's there. So factually, it's 94%, it's outside of the Islamic faith. You go to any of our, and then another thing, I'm sorry, that's why I got tea.
Do you need some water?
I had tea just to, because I'm taking medicine and it kind of messes with me. Another thing to understand when it comes to terrorism, if you just take Muslim extremists, I guess to say Islamic extremists, like I said, it's an oxymoron, it doesn't make sense. Christian extremists doesn't make sense. It's an oxymoron. Nevertheless, to say extremism is something that roots from Islam, not only is it nonsense, but if you look at who are the most affected people of terrorism, anybody? Muslims. The people that get affected, people think Iraq is over. No, if you go to Iraq, there are people dying every single day till today because of extremism. It just doesn't get reported. And the continent, which is completely excluded out of media coverage, is Africa. When is the last time you hear about Africa, right? And people are dying in Africa day by day because of extremism. Muslim extremism, people of other faith extremism. So when it comes to extremism, and specifically within the Muslim community, the people that are affected the most are Muslims. The people that die from extreme attacks are who? Muslims. So you'll find Iraq on top, Afghanistan on top, Pakistan on top. These are Muslim majority countries. So, I mean, rationally, if you think, it doesn't make sense for you to go and kill your own people. So that's there. Statistically, the question is wrong. And the reason I think extremism finds its way is because of what we were talking about previously, is the way we look at our own religion and own faith. What we see, the problem comes from idealists. Idealists are people who believe that, they want this utopian world, everything is perfect. In faith, God never intended the world to be perfect. It's a place of test and trial. If everything was going to be perfect, then how are you supposed to be judged in the court of God?
I think a lot of our lack of civility is based on fear that you're going to get what I think is mine. And I think in many ways it's prompted by our leaders. Many of our political leaders foster atmospheres of fear, and we just kind of walk into it. But I think that especially in the United States, as we have a tradition of civic participation, it's our duty as citizens to educate ourselves and to engage in a civil, rational way. It used to be possible, for example, for Democrats and Republicans to